Remaking maps can be a delicate balance. On one end, if you fill the map pool of a new game with too many remakes, people can be upset that they don't get to see any new maps. Or remake no maps and you have people constantly ask for map X, Y, or Z to be remade. For me, I have always fallen on the side of map remakes being a safe way to pad out a map pool with lots of fun content. You know that map worked well in the past and was well liked, and unless something goes terribly wrong in the remake process, players are still going to enjoy the map. Unlike creating a new map where obviously you don't know player reception until it's pushed out to the public. I really enjoy map remakes in games as it lets you relive moments and experiences you had on those maps in the past. Except now, along with reliving those moments and experiences, you get to build upon that in a new game. If you look at Counter-Strike, for the most part they've recycled the same maps in and out over the years, reworking them as they see fit. I really like that style as it allows you to really build on the maps that you have, rather than just starting at ground zero with every new game. However, that isn't usually the way that it's handled in Halo. For the most part, we get a remake or two on launch, and then maybe another remake or two as maps are added over the years. So, with all that said, I understand that it's unlikely all these maps are going to be remade in Infinite. Hell, I would say it's literally impossible that this many maps would get remade in Infinite. But I'm going to show you guys 3 maps from every Halo that should be remade in Halo Infinite. Now before we get started, I just want to quickly let you know some of my thought process for picking these maps so you guys can kind of understand the headspace that I was in. First, for these maps, I'm picking maps that were new in each game, either on launch or a DLC, so I'm not going to be including remakes. I did this to avoid picking midship or other classic maps multiple times, as that just seemed kind of like a loophole to me. Second, for the 3 maps I picked, 2 of them are going to be 4v4 or standard size maps, and 1 is going to be a big team battle map. I did it this way because that is what I play more of in Halo, so it made more sense to me to suggest maps that I personally had more time on. That said, it isn't like I haven't played Big Team Battle throughout the years, and there are some BTB maps that I really love. And lastly, for Halo 5, since all the BTB maps in that game were forged, I will just be recommending 3 standard maps in that game. I didn't see any reason to recommend a Warzone remake, because we don't even know if Warzone is making a return. Alright, now that we have all that out of the way, let's get started with Halo CE. Alright, the first map in Halo CE that I'm going to recommend is Battle Creek. Battle Creek is a map located on Installation 04, and it's basically just a canyon with 2 Forerunner bases on each end, with a creek separating them in the middle. This map was generally good for anything 4v4 or even free-for-all games. The use of having teleports on each of the bases made the map pretty unique, as you can get from one base to the other in literal seconds, and you don't actually have to push across the middle of the map unless you're trying to control some of the power weapons that spawn there or the power-ups. Over the years, this map has been remade multiple times, as it has been in Halo CE obviously, remade in Halo 2, and again remade in Halo Reach during the Halo Combat Evolved anniversary. This map is a pretty competitive map and has even been featured in the pro circuit during Halo Reach. More specifically, the recent Halo Reach tournaments that were ran when Halo Reach came to PC. I don't know if this was actually included in the pro circuit during Halo Reach's heyday. For the most part, you're going to want to either play Slayer on this map, King of the Hill, or maybe CTF, although CTF I would say is mostly just a social mode, as it can get pretty hectic since, like I said, you can get from one base to another in literal seconds. The use of those teleports though can make for some extremely fun flanks, and I have had many good memories playing on this map. Next up, we're going to move on to my second map, and that is going to be Chill Out. Chill Out is a map that features kind of that Covenant style structure and is an asymmetrical map. Chill Out is probably one of the smallest maps in the game, which really gives it that unique and closed in feeling that some of the other maps don't really have. Like I mentioned, the map is asymmetrical and doesn't really have any set bases, as you spend most of the game just fighting over the multiple different levels and the different power-ups and power weapons. Although this map can be used for 4v4 games, I would say it's honestly at its best for free-for-all or doubles matches. Just because of that smaller size, it can get a little bit hectic during 4v4. I mostly would say that this map is good for Slayer, although you can play some objective modes on it, they just again get kinda crazy. This map has made a return in the Halo franchise in Halo 3 as a DLC map known as Cold Storage. Overall, Chill Out is a very fun and kinda unique map that kinda gives me some of those Quake vibes when you're playing on it. It's not totally a Quake map by any means, but compared to some of the other maps, especially in Halo CE, it did really give me more of that arena vibe that some of the other Halo maps don't. For the last Halo CE map and my BTB map for Halo CE, I'm going to recommend Sidewinder. Now I know this can be a little bit contentious as I'm not going to recommend Blood Gulch, but just kind of hear me out here. Blood Gulch is an extremely iconic map and something that we can all think of when we think of Halo. However, I don't really think that Blood Gulch plays all that amazing in its remakes, especially the Halo 2 Anniversary remake version, and therefore I went with something like Sidewinder, as we have seen this map work well in some of the newer Halo games, specifically Halo 3 when it was brought back as Avalanche. This map is located on Installation 04 and is basically just a horseshoe with a base on each end. It's set in a snowy environment, giving it a different feel than a lot of the other maps that are going to be on this list. This map obviously is perfect for any type of BTB mode, whether that be Slayer or Capture the Flag or any other mode that you want to play. There's usually a lot of fun vehicles and weapons on it, although obviously that would totally depend on what 343 decided to place in Halo Infinite. Usually, like I said though, the map is built as a horseshoe with a base on each end, and then there's usually a tunnel structure in the middle that can let you get from one side to the other without having to go all the way around. This can lead to some extremely fun fights, as you'll have a ton of people just funneling into this little choke point. When not in the bases or in the tunnels, Sidewinder is extremely open and therefore can be really fun to snipe on, as any players caught out in the open are basically just dead men. If this map was to make a return in Halo Infinite, obviously 343 could go with a totally different aesthetic, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a snowy environment, as we have seen in the remake in Halo Online, as they took a more desert atmosphere. Now moving on to Halo 2, we're going to start with one of the most iconic competitive maps in Halo history, and that is Midship. Midship is a pretty small map compared to a lot of other ones and is set on a Covenant ship, which gives it that really cool Covenant purple aesthetic. Midship has been a huge map over the years in every single iteration in the competitive scene, whether that's Midship in Halo 2, Heretic in Halo 3, or later on Truth in Halo 5. The map is a symmetrical map with a base on each end, and then two different mini bases on each side of the map. The map generally is really good for Team Slayer, Capture the Flag, Oddball, or even just free-for-all. The map has been frequently used as a main map in free-for-all tournaments over its many different iterations. One thing that kind of makes Midship unique to me is the lack of power weapons. In most its iterations, the only real power weapon on the map is usually just a sword on top mid. This is a lot different than a lot of other Halo maps, as even some of the smaller arena maps usually feature sniper rifles or rocket launchers or various other power weapons. Due to this lack of power weapons, Midship to me has always been a map that really emphasizes team play and personal skill. Although don't get me wrong, the map is still pretty fun for things like team snipers. Pretty much every iteration of Midship throughout its years has been well liked, and I think this would be a map that would be very welcomed into the Halo Infinite map pool, especially by the competitive community. Next up, we have another competitive map that has been featured in the competitive community a lot throughout the years, and that is Sanctuary. Sanctuary is a map that's set outside on a Forerunner memorial. Perfect for any of your team modes or even free-for-all. The map, just like Midship, can be very versatile. The map is another symmetrical map with a base on each end, a sniper hut on each end, and then a big ring structure in the middle of the map that players can fight for control over. Usually at the bottom of this ring spawns a rocket launcher or a energy sword, depending on the variation of the map. Another map that really emphasizes team play, as it's very hard to make solo plays on Sanctuary, since it's very easy to get team shot all across the map. Sanctuary has made its appearance multiple times throughout the Halo franchise, in Halo 2 obviously as Sanctuary, in Halo 2 Anniversary as Shrine, and then in Halo Reach it was remade and forged once as Asylum by Bungie, and then later on by the competitive community, where they just called it Sanctuary. Throughout the various iterations of Sanctuary, one of the most important spots to hold has always been that top of the ring in the middle, called Ring 3. Depending on the variation of this map, the jump to get up there took various amounts of skill, although in Halo 2 Anniversary specifically, you can make that jump from all different points using the spring jump mechanic. Like I said earlier, the map is really just good for any team-based mode or even free-for-all. The map is great for competitive play, but can also be fun in that more social environment, even playing something again like Team Snipers. The map is just a well-balanced map, and you're not going to have many people complain about it, as usually if you're losing on it, it's due to a lack of skill and not some imbalance in the map. Lastly, for Halo 2, we're going to move on to my BTB suggestion, and that is going to be Zanzibar. Zanzibar has always been a unique map to me, as it has a beach on one end, a big base on the other end, and a big windmill in the middle. The map is really fun for basically any BTB mode that you can think of, and has been featured in smaller game modes throughout the years, although usually it's just a little bit too big for those. Zanzibar itself in Halo 2 was pretty cool because the base had a large gate that could be opened by a switch but then not closed after that. For Halo 2 this was pretty unique as not many maps at that time had features that could be influenced by the player. Although for a BTB map, Zanzibar isn't a great vehicle map just due to the routes, it can still be a lot of fun on to snipe or get invis and kind of pick people off. The map has also made multiple returns throughout the years, in Halo 3 as Last Resort, and in Halo 2 Anniversary as Stone Town. The map is asymmetrical, which gives you a unique feeling depending on which team you are, and has been used in specifically Halo 3 and Halo 2 Anniversary for many cool custom games. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, one of the things that really makes Zanzibar cool is it pretty much supports every type of combat depending on where you are on the map. There's close quarter battles, there's mid-range battles, there's sniping where you can take long duels all the way across the map, and you still have those vehicles to give you some vehicle combat. Pretty much everything is in Zanzibar except for big open spaces and aerial combat. The wheel is also super unique as it's one of the few moving map pieces in a Halo 2 map. The wheel basically just slowly spins around and you can actually use it to get from the bottom of the wheel to the top, which can make for some unique plays. Overall, Zanzibar is just a fun map that I think pretty much everyone has good memories playing. Now we're going to move on to Halo 3. Where the first map that we're going to talk about is Guardian. Guardian has always been one of my favorite maps, and I think that's just because of how unique it is. Set in a jungle on top of giant trees surrounded by Forerunner structures, the map gives you a feeling that basically no other Halo maps do. There's multiple different routes on the map that involve using a gravity lift, along with just your standard routes that you walk across. Its asymmetrical layout makes it great for Slayer and Team Slayer game modes, but with the platform in the middle, it can also be really fun for King of the Hill or game modes like Oddball. The map is kind of similar-ish to something like Lockout or Ascension, but it's just a map that I've always found much more fun. The map is pretty much perfect for free-for-all, team doubles, or even just your standard 4v4 modes. Guardian is also pretty cool because although I was really never able to do many of them, it has a ton of different trick jumps that players can use to get a competitive advantage. Overall, I just find the aesthetic of Guardian really fun and the asymmetrical layout pretty unique, and it's just always been a map that I have enjoyed. Next up in Halo 3, we have another pretty unique map that also hasn't been remade throughout the years, and that is Narrows. Narrows is a map located on the Ark and has a sort of Forerunner outpost bridge going across the middle of the map. This bridge is the focal point of the map and the main place that most of the battles are going to take on this map, although to the side of the bridge is two man cannons that shoot you across from one base to the other. This makes for just a totally unique style of play, as you can get from one base to the other as easy as just running into that man cannon, or you can fight your way across the top or the bottom of the bridge to get to your opponent's base and take them out. The map has been great throughout the years for Capture the Flag, Team Slayer, basically any mode that you can think of. The map is also kind of cool because the design is sort of similar to some of the outdoor bridges on the Halo CE campaign levels, Assault on the Control Bridge and Two Betrayals. This is just a cool throwback to one of the previous games. In some of the objective games like Capture the Flag, players can actually throw the flags across the man cannon, which is a totally different style of play, as you can grab the flag and throw it to your team at the other base while you fight off the enemies. I think it would be a lot of fun to see this map back in Halo Infinite, and assuming we don't have a thruster or anything like that that would ruin the routes of the map, I think it would be pretty fun to play. Lastly, for the Halo 3 maps, we're going to cover the BTB map Valhalla. The map has often been said to be a spiritual successor of Blood Gulch, however I just find it a lot more enjoyable. Whether or not you actually consider it a spin-off of Blood Gulch is up to you, but the map is set on the Ark and is set down in a valley with various different terrain features. You have the two bases on each end, and then you have multiple different routes throughout the map to get from one base to the other, with different caves and different hills to provide cover for the player. Or if you're really risky, you can just take the man cannon at the top of the base, basically throwing you into top mid, where you'll most likely run into a ton of different enemies. Like most BTB maps, Valhalla is fun for basically any BTB mode, whether it's Team Slayer, Capture the Flag, or anything else you want to play. Valhalla also has been utilized in the past as a 4v4 map, although like some of the other bigger maps that have been featured as 4v4 maps, I find it can play a little slow as the map is pretty big. 4v4 snipers though is pretty fun on the map, or just big team battle snipers, as you do have some of those longer sightlines where you can take long shots to take out your enemies, which is always pretty fun. The bases on each end are also pretty cool and unique, and were always super cool to me to see back in the day. They're sort of like these beam emitting bases that are Forerunner technology. Valhalla to me was one of the classic BTB maps from Halo 3, and it is a map that has already returned in Halo 4 as Ragnarok, but a map that I think everyone would love to see back. It was remade in Halo 5 as a Forge map, and even though that Forge map was a lot of fun and did pretty good justice, I would love to see a proper remake of Valhalla in Halo Infinite. Next, we're going to move on to Halo Reach, and for the first map we're going to cover is Countdown. Halo Reach is pretty unique, as all of the levels included on the game's launch were also featured in the campaign, which is something that previous Halo games had not done. Countdown is a symmetrical map with 3 different floors and a base on each side that was used pretty heavily in Halo Reach as a competitive map. The map can get pretty hectic at times if you don't understand the power positions on the map, but overall it's a pretty fun map. The map is pretty good for free-for-all or pretty much any of your 4v4 modes. Next up in Halo Reach, the map I'm going to suggest is Zealot. Zealot is set on the Covenant ship Ardent Prayer, which gives it that cool Covenant aesthetic. The map is made up of 3 levels, although if I'm being honest with you, I preferred the MLG variant of the map that completely closed off the upper level. The upper level is a low gravity mode, which did make the map pretty unique, but I was just never that big a fan of that area of the map. On the bottom 2 floors, you basically just have a circular style map that has a big structure in the middle, and you play around that at various points of interest, controlling power weapons and different spots. The map is good for free-for-all or again any of those 4v4 modes like Team Slayer, Capture the Flag, or whatever else you want to play. The map is one of the few maps in the Halo franchise that lets players go out into space in regular gameplay. Overall, I wouldn't say Zealot is one of my favorite maps in the Halo franchise, but it is a pretty solid map in Halo Reach's map pool. The map was used pretty heavily in the competitive scene for Halo Reach, and therefore I would not mind seeing it back in Halo Infinite. Lastly, in Halo Reach, the map that I'm going to suggest as the quote-unquote big team battle map is Spire. Now, Spire is technically a map that was brought in for Invasion, as it features that big spire structure that the offensive team would attack. The map was utilized though as a big team battle map, and I found it pretty fun. While jumping off the spire in Halo Reach would lead to your death if you didn't land on one of the landing spots, in something like Halo Infinite there might not be fall damage, therefore giving the player freedom to jump off the top of the spire and make some really fun plays. Overall, I just think Spire is a pretty unique map, and although it might not be the most balanced or most fun map in the Halo franchise, I think it would be pretty fun to see it return just for its unique features. Next, we're going to move on to Halo 4, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, due to the fact that I didn't play a whole ton of Halo 4, I'm kind of suggesting some of these maps just based off of what I've heard, rather than exactly what I played. The first map that we're going to talk about is Haven, and Haven is a map that I did enjoy in Halo 4. The map is set in a Forerunner power facility and was really honestly perfect for free-for-all. Kinda has like a semi-circular setup going on, and is probably honestly Halo 4's best map. It was also remade in Halo 5 as Mercy, which again was a really fun map. I don't necessarily love the aesthetic of the map during Halo 4, but I do think the layout was pretty strong, and therefore it making it a return in Halo Infinite could be really cool, especially since we've already seen them remake it in Halo 5 with a new aesthetic, and I really enjoyed that version of the map. Although like I said, the map is really good for free-for-all, it also works for your regular 4v4 game modes, just like many of the other maps on this list. The second Halo 4 4v4 map that I'm going to recommend is Skyline. Skyline is a symmetrical map with kind of that urban aesthetic. This is pretty unique for Halo, as there aren't a whole ton of maps set in that urban environment, so that alone makes it kind of unique. Like I said, I didn't play a whole ton of Halo 4, and therefore I didn't personally play a whole ton of this map, as it was added in a map pack later on in the game's lifespan. I do remember the map being used in the grand finals for that free-for-all challenge, and for almost that alone, that's going to be one of the reasons I recommend this map, just because it has that iconic memory in my mind. The map is really good for free-for-all, or again, most of those 4v4 modes. Next up is the map Exile, which is another map that I just didn't really play a whole lot of, and this is going to be your BTB map for Halo 4. Exile has that canyon terrain and is often considered one of Halo 4's best maps, and especially Halo 4's best BTB map. For fans of Halo 4, they would frequently tell you that this is a map that they would like to see return, and therefore I think it would be cool to see it in Halo Infinite. Next up, moving on to Halo 5, the first map that I'm going to recommend is Coliseum, which is a map set on a Forerunner facility. Coliseum is honestly probably my best unique map from Halo 5 and was a really good map for competitive play. Perfect for capture the flag or Slayer or whatever else you want to play, the map just played really well. I was never a huge fan of the aesthetic, but again that's something that easily could change in a remake of the map, as I found the layout of the map pretty strong. The map is symmetrical with kind of a base on each end and then 2 points of interest on the different sides of the map with a lowered middle area of the map. I really enjoyed Coliseum in my time in Halo 5 and would love to see it return in Halo Infinite. Next up in Halo 5, I'm going to recommend the Halo 5 arena map, Plaza. Plaza is set in a small plaza near a train station and is another map that has that urban aesthetic. Unlike Coliseum, Plaza features an asymmetrical layout and is really good for Team Slayer. Plaza is another one of the unique maps from Halo 5 that is usually held to decent regards and was pretty fun to play on during my time. I do remember playing Strongholds on Plaza and that wasn't exactly my favorite, but I always enjoyed playing Team Slayer on it. Lastly, for Halo 5, I'm going to recommend the Rig. Like I mentioned before, since Halo 5 didn't actually have any developer-made big team battle maps, I'm just suggesting 3 regular 4v4 sized maps. The Rig is set on a mining platform and is another asymmetrical map. Although the map wasn't perfect by any means and sometimes could seem unbalanced depending on the setup that your opponent got, I always found the map pretty enjoyable. I preferred playing Team Slayer or Free-for-all Slayer on the map, although I do remember playing Strongholds on it from time to time. The Rig was also later on remixed as a map called Molten, and although I think the layout of the Rig itself was a little bit more balanced, I really like the aesthetic of Molten, so maybe they could keep both of those in mind if they decided to remake the Rig. That is pretty much going to wrap it up for all my map remake suggestions. The only thing that I'm going to hit on the way out is some maps from Halo Online. I don't actually really think that 343 should spend time to remake either of these maps, but I figured since we were hitting every Halo game, I should at least recommend them. There's only 2 actual unique maps from Halo Online, and those are Edge and Reactor. Edge is your 4v4 map from the game, and Reactor is more of a big team battle map, and like I said, I don't know if I'd really recommend either of these being remade, but I just wanted to mention them in case someone really loved either of these maps. Anyways, that's going to do it for the video. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see remade in Halo Infinite, if any. As always, if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. If you want to catch me Wreck Noobs live, you can follow me over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Arrrash with 3 R's. And if that isn't enough me for you, you can also follow me on Twitter at Arrrash with 4 R's. With that said, I'll see you all next time.